welcome to the latest webinar in our Engineerica educational keynote series. We are so pleased to be bringing you our first complimentary presentation of 2024. For those of you who are new to us, Engineerica specializes in academic center management systems for higher education. You might be familiar with some of our software applications, including AccuTrack, Accudemia, or AccuCampus. And of course, I do want to give a special welcome to any Engineerica clients joining us today. And for those of you who are not yet clients, I do want to let you know we are offering a complimentary trial of our most popular center management system, Accudemia. This gives you the opportunity to use Accudemia for an entire semester risk-free to see if it helps make management of your center and data collection easier. And as of right now, the webinar is full, so that's very exciting. All right. All right, sorry, just got to get rid of this dialog box here. All right. All right, so if this is something you're interested in, this complimentary free trial, you can send me an email at rachelc@engineerica.com. That's RACHELC at Engineerica, ENGINEERICA.com. And we are also delighted to announce we are going to be hosting a conference on student success on October 14th and 15th of this year. This is a live in-person conference during which we will offer some of these keynote sessions, more of these keynote sessions live. We'll also be offering training sessions on our academic products and accepting proposals for breakout sessions as well. So mark your calendars, join us in beautiful Orlando, Florida on these dates. The weather is usually gorgeous in October. It's a great time to go. The conference hotel is going to be within a 10-minute walk from Universal Studios, so you could come in on the weekend and visit the theme park beforehand. There's also some great shopping, dining close by. It's a great area. So mark your calendar, October 14th and 15th, and stay tuned for our conference announcement coming out soon. So we started this keynote series for our audience who want to learn more about best practices and trends in higher education. Each month we feature a distinguished speaker to talk about hot topics in the academic support field. We are still finalizing details for our next webinar, so keep an eye on your emails and on our social media accounts for an announcement for when we open up registration. So a quick introduction to myself. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm your MC for today. I'm a client success manager with Engineerica. I was previously a learning center manager for 6 years, so I am very passionate, like the rest of you, about higher education and student success. I also have with me my colleague Justin Virasamy, one of our technical support specialists. He's here as my backup and also to help with any technical issues that might come up for any of us on the line today. And with that, I am pleased to introduce you to this month's speaker. Chrisika Harper is a trailblazing PhD student at Texas State University who immerses herself in the world of developmental education with an emphasis on learning support. She aims to use her research as a powerful force dedicated to enhancing the academic success of Black males, student athletes, and low or limited income students of color. As a passionate educator and coach, Chrisika's impact extends through workshops, coaching, and transformative social initiatives. A proud alumna of Henderson State University and St. Edward's University with a BA in political science and a master's in college student development. She has graced various institutions as a speaker and been featured on podcasts, radio stations, and in community publications. Founder of Court 31, an empowerment company dedicated to uplifting girls and women in sports, Chrisika is a beacon of inspiration. She thrives as a servant leader, attributing her success to unwavering faith, family, and the invaluable guidance of educators, coaches, and mentors who have shaped her remarkable journey. I am pleased to introduce Chrisika, and I am going to go ahead and hand things over to her.
All right, thank you so much, Rachel and the Engineerica team. It is an honor, privilege to be here with so many amazing educators. Listen, I am about to share my screen, but one thing that I want to know, Ms. Rachel, you told me something Monday. You told me that we become history makers and record breakers. Okay, What that means is, Miss Rachel, tell them how many people we got into the room today.
Well, we have just hit capacity. We have 251, which is our max attendees. I mean, we had over 600 people registered. But of course, anybody who wasn't able to make it in today is going to be able to view that recording later on.
Yes, great job, everybody. Listen, I wanted to start off with that and being excited about that, because in spite of what's happening in our world, in our country, on our campuses, that there are educators. If we were in a room together, I would be high-fiving you. I would be fist bumping you. And if you're a hugger, see, I'm down here in Texas, we hugging all on people all the time. But if we were in person, I believe that is worth celebration. Because in spite of all those things, in spite of some of our trials and tribulations that are happening, in spite of being confused about sometimes how to support students, we have shown up. We are committed. We are still hopeful. We are still invested in the success of students. And so again, thank you so much for being here. Again, I am blessed to be before you all. Listen, again, my name is Christika Harper. I have to do my speech again. I'm working on it. I'm a first year PhD student at the Texas State University. We call it Sunny San Mo, San Marcos, Texas, in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. My program is developmental education. So if I got some Dev Ed folks in the room, shout out to Dev Ed. And my concentration is learning support. So let's get started. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And so before we get too deep, of course, as an educator, in regular educator fashion, I'm going to have us do a lot of engagement. So let's work on it one more time. I have the agenda up, but before we get to the agenda, if you can get over into the question box, type "I'm ready." Type "I'm ready" with an exclamation point if you are ready to grow and ready to learn and ready to engage with a topic that is beautiful to talk about, but sometimes difficult to talk about.
We are seeing a ton of people.
I'm ready. Hold on, let me pause here. See, I'm already going over my section of my time here. How excited are you? Why are you excited? Y'all tell me, why are you excited? Because I know we're in a virtual space, but I want to help people feel like we are in person. Why are you excited? Tell me why you're excited. And while you are typing that, I'll go over the agenda here. So type into there, why are you excited? We need this information. Yes, thank you, Rollins. Thank you. So our agenda, we'll go over some introductions, and then I will talk a little bit about marginalization, that word, that term, that definition, and then I'll transition into talking about the transition theory that I have absolutely fallen in love with over the past couple of years since I've been introduced to Dr. Nancy Schlossberg's work. And I think that can really help us in frame how we do this work. And then policies, I'm only going to talk about two policies. We could talk all day about policies and procedures, right? But I think we can look at two specific ways, policies, procedures, that we can approach this population of students. And then number four, the journey to help seeking. It's a journey. I know you all saw that title, confidence and help seeking. How can we increase that? Our students, it just seems like they're not advocating for themselves. They're not coming to our office. How do we support them? But it is a journey. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. And then lastly, next steps, next steps. And so we will hold the mirror to ourselves quite a bit today as we're talking about our students. So I have one goal. I see a lot of "I'm ready" and a lot of exclamation points. So I believe y'all have the same goal as I have. But the goal that I have for you and for us today is to help you feel more empowered, more excited, more hopeful, and more confident in your ability, because you have the ability, your ability to help students achieve success. Now, as I mentioned to you in educator fashion, of course, I got about 4 questions for us to think through. Okay, I know you just coming from lunch. You're like, okay, Krista, I have to answer 4 questions already, but this is just a way for us to connect. You all did a marvelous job. Of course, we're educators. We did a great job of engaging with the question about the book, and you are typing into the chat a lot already. So let's go over these questions. You can just answer one or however many you want to answer, but I just kind of want to see who's in the room, because I don't think I have bots. I think all 251 are actually humans. And so let's answer some of these questions, whichever ones you want to answer. Number 1, what institution are you chiming in from and your role? Number 2, what piqued your interest in this session? Number 3, what's been your experience working with students on probation? It is intentional that that word is marked out, because we'll talk about language. How do we describe this student population. And then after reading about the session, what are some initial thoughts or questions? What are some initial thoughts or questions? We got UT Dallas, we got the DFW in here, Mississippi Valley State, HBCU, ACC. I'm down here in San Marcos, so you're right up the road. That's my hometown right there. Hometown folks. Wow, West Point. Wow, UC Berkeley, Penn State, College Success Advising. Wow, wanting to improve current practices. Wow, wow, wow. So I'm going to write a few of these down that I see because I want to try to be as specific as I can, but we're serving a lot of different amazing universities. So thank you all so much for chiming in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, okay, we're getting some engagement practice in. Let me go over the overview. I want to let you know that I did make some edits. When you're coming before people, it's important that you make it applicable to them, that you don't just put up some information and waste their time. And so I made some edits because I started to feel that there are certain things that we need to spend a little more time on. And so thank you for being flexible. So let me read the overview so you know what's coming up in our session today. This workshop will offer guidance to you as a practitioner in effectively supporting students on academic probation. Remember, I have that crossed out, okay? With an emphasis on marginalized students of color. And I added this so that we're clear. This is focused on Black and Latinx students. We're going to spend a little more time talking about their experiences, but I truly still believe, despite literature and some things that are happening, I believe that all students deserve and are worthy of the things that we're going to talk about. But I do want to let you know that we will focus on that particular population in my experience and in my professional assessment. I'll emphasize the importance of acknowledging and addressing the unique challenges these students encounter that prevent them from accessing and asking for help-seeking help. This presentation will highlight practical strategies. Sometimes we just got to be a little more practical and fundamental. And innovation is great, but let's also think fundamentals that create a more empowering and supportive environment. These include tailored and holistic support services, encompassing mentorship approaches and transformational academic policies. This workshop will encourage you to adopt empathetic and culturally aware approaches that empower you to provide comprehensive support to the specific needs of vulnerable students on academic probation. So, of course, we are talking about a topic that can be very sensitive to talk about, And so I want to kindly ask and encourage a couple of things from you. Number one, to hold up that mirror sometimes throughout our session. And I will have some prompts for us to do that. To reflect on your life's journey and continue to ask the question, why is this important? Listen deeply and critically to the information shared. And then lastly, ask questions, share your thoughts, concerns, critiques, frustrations, and excitement as much as you want. And you see that I have started Rachel because Rachel may be doing a lot of talking today. But I want us to do all of that in this space. We welcome all of those emotions and actions in this space. So marginalization. This word, it was in the overview, it was in the description, this word, students who are marginalized, communities who are marginalized, what does that mean? So if we have not really looked at the definition, this is what it is. When a person or groups of people are less able to do things or access basic services or opportunities. Go ahead and get into the chat. When you see this word, marginalization, after we've read this definition, what comes to mind for you? It could be a word, it could be an emotion, it could be an emoticon. What comes to mind? Whenever you see that word, marginalization, access, fear.
I'm seeing a lot of good responses here.
And I'll read them off, Ms. Rachel, it'll be sometimes off. Left out the fringe, limits, anger, frustration, wow, isolated. So we have these emotions, and as you can see, Some of the language that we're using, let's take note of it. Fear, deficit. And for me, when I was thinking about this, I always tend to ask questions, why? My mom used to always say, girl, keep asking so many questions. But I'm still that way. Why? Makes sense why we're educators. But why do these people experience this? How do these individuals or groups experience this? I see silos as well. And where do these people, these students, these groups of human beings that are worthy and valuable, where are they experiencing this? So because this topic brings about certain emotions and thoughts and even sometimes trauma and pain, during our time together, this is what you can expect from me, because I want to be very aware of what I'm talking about and honor the people that I'm talking to and with and about. You can expect from me, hopefully you can tell that I speak with passion and energy. I want us to feel some things, but that's also my upbringing. Okay, a lot of energy, a lot of passion when you're speaking. And then with a little speed and humor. Okay, we got about 40 minutes so far. And so I'll go fast and I try to make jokes. I love laughing. I think I'm a comedian. So I can't hear you, but I can feel you laughing when I share those jokes. So thank you. Number two, share my personal and professional assessment. You can expect from me to share tips and tools grounded in scholarship, my cultural upbringing, and as an African American woman in academia with a disability. Ask for your thoughts. You can expect me to ask for your thoughts, as you can tell, your concerns and your questions often. And I will also ground my words and my approach to you and this subject and this space with Ubuntu. Now, this idea of Ubuntu, when I was a young lady in the public education system, I would be in programs quite often. I'm so grateful that my mom put me in so many amazing community programs. And I was taught about this idea of Ubuntu, this philosophy, this African philosophy. And I would be called upon to recite that at a very early age. It goes like this: I am because we are. We are because I am. What I do to you, I do to myself, and I do to the community. The great theologian Desmond Tutu said, a person with Ubuntu is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good, for he or she or they have a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she or they belong in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated or diminished, when others are tortured or oppressed. Marginalization, uncertainty, lack of belonging, poverty, resilience. I am because we are. We are because I am. Ubuntu. Another great man, an amazing scholar, and former president of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, said, we're talking about marginalization, we're talking about students of color. A child must learn early, when early, to believe that they are somebody worthwhile and that they can do many praiseworthy things. I'm going to go a little fast here, but I want you to think about this quote. And on your paper, on your notebook, because we educators, I know y'all got notebooks and everything all around you, or if you're multitasking, I want you to think about the first time in education that an educator made you feel like you were somebody, like you were worthwhile. The first time, what grade, how old were you, and what was that educator's name if you did have that experience? You don't have to get into the chat, but you can if you want. When was the first time that an educator helped you to believe or introduced you to the idea that you are somebody worthwhile. And if you want to take a further step, you are welcome to put their name out into this space via the chat. For me, third grade, Mrs. Collier, Brook Avenue Elementary School. Mrs. Beeman, thank you. When I was a junior in high school. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Collier. Thank you, Mrs. Collier. Thank you, Mrs. Monique. Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Thank you, Mrs. Schneider. Those are my people that I still remember. And I will be honest with you and say that was elementary school. And I can't call a name after the 6th grade. Not that they were not amazing, but for me in my life, I have a few in elementary school. Took a little time, and then when I got to college, I met a few more. Thank you all for sharing. We talked about Ubuntu. We talked about what Dr. Mays shared with us, and we're talking about marginalization, and we're talking about confidence and help seeking. So let's talk about some research. There's a reason why I took us through this process, because we have to slow down a little bit and really think about our own experiences and what it means to serve people, but also what it has meant for us when we were served. It's important for us to do that. So as a first year PhD student, you all know that I'm learning about so many different scholars and researchers. It has been fun, but I have learned about so many. So it was a little difficult getting this into this time frame, but two specific scholars that I want to highlight now is Masood and Mowat. And there's a text entitled Accommodating Marginalized Students in Higher Education, a Structural Theory Approach. And these authors were seeking to understand the negative impacts of marginalization. Authors have concluded that marginalization is closely linked to negative emotions, such as isolation, unworthiness, unfairness, deprivation, some of the same words that we use, and that these individuals face obstacles when trying to access mainstream resources, which can further exacerbate their situation. Okay, think about that. And some of us are reminded of that, and some of us have to really think about that a little harder, depending on the institution that you work for. Like, what is actually happening for these students on my campus? Then Mowat went on to argue that marginalized individuals often feel disconnected from their community and struggle to find a sense of belonging, help seeking. They're struggling to find that sense of belonging. We want them to come and ask for help, but there's some other things going on. This can lead to a perception that they are not valued members of their community and may hinder their ability to contribute positively. Furthermore, marginalized individuals may face difficulties when trying to access service and opportunities that are easily available to others. Okay? Such amazing work being done by them. The next two authors in the same text, Harrison and Atherton, talk about the 4 dimensions of marginalization. I'm starting here, and you are welcome to get into the chat whenever you see something. But I am starting here because let's first do a breakdown of how our students are coming into our spaces, why they're kind of behaving in the way that they're behaving. Let's just get a background a little bit. And you notice I haven't went too far back into history. I haven't said the R word, aka racism. We're just talking about some general things right now. 4 dimensions of marginalization that I think are really interesting that I hadn't necessarily learned about until last year. Our students may be marginalized by society, the stereotype, the devaluation, the stigma when they're coming to our spaces. They may be marginalized by time and space. Gone are the days where we have students, 100% of our student body, no one has a job, everybody's just going to class and then going back to the res hall and reading and writing. We don't necessarily have that population of students as much as in the original decades of higher education. So they're marginalized by time and space. They're coming from different places. The next dimension that the authors talk about is marginalization by system, the bureaucracy of a system, the dissonance that then happens, the distance between the marginalized, the student who's been marginalized, and the institution and the state. We learned during COVID-19 that there is a tech divide. I'll be frank and say I never really thought about a tech divide until I was teaching virtually in the K through 12 system and realized that some of my students did not have a laptop, that some of my students didn't have an iPad, didn't have internet. So they could be marginalized by systems. Lastly, marginalization by relevance. Relevance. Am I relevant here? Do I see myself in the curriculum? I'm in the state of Texas, and I know we are from all different parts of the world and the country, but relevance. Can I learn a certain thing in my school? Am I relevant? Am I relevant in the curriculum, the pedagogy? Am I relevant? Okay. So the 4 dimensions of marginalization can be really important for us to think about as we talk about our programming. Now, here we are talking about the transition theory, kind of set the tone in the background of how students are maybe marginalized, okay, and some emotions and what's attached to that, some of their habits and activities. Transition theory, Dr. Nancy K. Schlossberg, get it to the chat. Put a yes if you know who she is or have heard of her work, transition, or put a no if this is your first time. Yes, if you know about her. No, if you don't. Yes, yes, no, no, yes, we got, yes, this is wonderful. So a reminder to some and a new introduction to others. Dr. Schlossberg wanted to know, even because of her own experiences, she started about how do we handle individuals and adults in transition? Our students not only have transitioned into higher education, but now they transition into this academic status that is causing them some concerns and causing us to think about how we're going to serve them. So she believes a need existed to develop a systematic framework that would facilitate an understanding of adults in transition. We have all been through so many transitions. She defined a transition as any event or non-event that results in changed relationships, routines, assumptions, and roles. How often have you heard a student say, well, in high school, right? Or how often have you said, this is in high school? So there's been a transition. And so she talks about this idea of transition, and she went on to develop something that can help us understand it as pragmatically as possible, as simple as possible. She talks about these 4 S's. So before a transition, you can read at the bottom if you're looking at the screen. Before a transition, your life is fairly organized. You know what's going on, you know your role, you know your relationship, daily routines and assumptions. Remember those 4 areas. But when you make a transition, life becomes different. Some new things are introduced. Organization changes for you. And she created this idea of the 4 S's, which can serve as variables for us to think through. Number 1, the situation. When we're thinking about how do we serve this population of students, I will be honest and say I've kind of approached certain times in my career from just a cookie cutter mindset. Like, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to apply this to every student of color. I'm going to apply this to every young man or every young woman or every student that's coming from Waco, Texas. I'm from Waco. I didn't tell y'all that. Shout out to Waco. Every student from Waco, Texas behaves like this. That's not true. I don't believe that that's true. And she also has shared that we have to be careful when we think about the situation. So number 1, situation. What's the situation? I think we most likely do a pretty good job of that, but I think we have some room to grow there in higher education. And then the second S is self. You looking at the student and asking, what are they bringing to the situation? So first, what was their perceived ability to control the situation, timing, and duration? And then what are they bringing to that? What's their psychological resources? What are their personal characteristics? And we know there are some students that are a little more optimistic in situations and some students that are a little more pessimistic. Everybody is different. So we have to be careful when we're assessing what the student is bringing. And then support. I think we do a good job of this, but we can improve. The support, what kind of institutional support does the student have in this situation, in this transition? And what kind of personal support do they have and what's available? Okay, again, roles, relationships, routines, and assumptions. And then lastly, this idea of strategies. What are their coping strategies? And I really want to highlight in strategies the need for us to break it down in three, how she has advised for us. And I think it's just so wonderful. I get so excited about talking about the transition theory. Coping strategies to modify the situation, which is different from controlling the meaning of the problem, which is different in aiding in managing the stress. So she advised for us to have these different coping strategies to help our students in transition. Get into the chat and talk with me a little bit. What does this sound like for you? How do you feel after learning a little bit about that transition theory? You're welcome to get into the chat. Of course, put those questions in there as well. How important is transition? And do we need theories and frameworks to help us as we guide students in the transition? So you're welcome to put in your ideas and comments there. Now let's get into the process. Yes, can I see the last slide? We'll definitely send out the last slide to you. Thank you. So now we're on to, okay, Christica, we've done a little background. I kind of knew some of those things. I knew it was tough for them, or I knew they needed help with transition. That is wonderful. So now let's talk about the actual process, the process that I believe is really beneficial for us to think about and think through. Okay, so recognizing the importance of providing targeted assistance. Let's explore proactive approaches to guide our students back on the path to academic success. So I mentioned policies in the overview. Let's talk about our policy. You're welcome to get into the chat and answer the question. Do you think your policies are affirming and empowering to your students? Just think about the policies and the procedures that you have. Are they affirming? Yes. I think you unmuted, or you're
I just wanted to mention, because I know that we've gotten some questions about this, and I did mention this up at the top, but just so everyone knows the way GoToWebinar works, there is no chat for everybody to see each other's responses, so that's why Chris and I are reading some of these aloud. Just letting everybody know about that, because we've gotten that question a couple times. But I am seeing some great responses.
That's good. Thank you, Ms. Rachel, so much. So policies, and I want to focus on two specific policies and the way that we operate in our department. We can think about the institution, but right now let's think about our staff that maybe we oversee, or our department in student success or academic coaching, planning success. So sometimes academic institutions really always should evaluate, but sometimes we may have some policies that hinder the student's academic progress and outcomes. And I'm going to talk about two areas. Number one, our communication policy. Do we create a culture and standard in communication where students are informed and empowered? I bring this up for an example in my experience in working with students on what we called at a certain institution SAP, okay, academic warning, academic probation, academic suspension. I've been a retention coordinator and overseeing that process. And I used to hear quite often, I don't know what academic warning is. I don't know what probation, et cetera, is. Or I don't know how to calculate my GPA, or I didn't know that this happens in college. Transition. Do they use these terms in high school? I don't know about any other person's high school, but in my high school, I don't ever remember hearing anything about academic warning, planning, suspension. I've heard the suspension word, but that was because of other things, majority of the time behavior. And so when we think about our communication policy, does every student on your campus know what this is, what academic empowerment is, what academic warning, probation, suspension is? Do they know about that? Do they know how they get onto those levels? Do they know how they can get off of those levels? And the particular students that we're talking about, students of color, do they know? The students that you are serving, do they know what this is, or are we assuming that they know what this is? So communication policy is really important. And then we'll go over a language policy. I'm going to call for a language shift. We've done it in certain areas. I believe, before, but I want to make a call or come alongside you all to make a call for a language policy shift. Language is so important. Remember earlier I had crossed out probation. There's a reason why I crossed that word out. Because the way language is the way we communicate with one another, it's the way we build relationships and create a sense of community. And so we'll talk about that in a couple of moments. So here's how you can think about it. For the sake of time, we won't be able to go over all of these, but we know about the SWOT analysis. I think that can really serve us well of implementing that SWOT analysis process into our communication policy. So again, talking about your department, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths? And have we done this as it relates to how we communicate with students on academic warning, probation, suspension? But guess what? Going before that step and asking, does every freshman at our university know what this is? Because with SAP, as we know, we're the educators, we're the practitioners, there's a qualitative measurement and a quantitative measurement. There's time frames, right? All of those things that the government has established for us, that our institutions have established, but does an 18-year-old know what it is? And if they don't know what it is, going back to empowering and transformative policies, why are we, or why have we not thought about, or can we encourage ourselves to say, well, if they don't know, how can I expect for them to be preventative? And it can be easy for us to say, well, they're in college, and so they're just supposed to work hard. They shouldn't have to worry about the warning and probation. If they work hard, we have to be careful with forgetting from whence we come. We have to be careful forgetting about when we were 18 and we just didn't know what we didn't know. So that's a tool and a process. If you haven't done it, or if you haven't thought about it, thinking about what is my communication policy to empower them. Empowering them, again, is letting them know and educating them on college terms and vocabulary. That's one way, and maybe creating a communication policy around that could be helpful for you. Next, language. Remember, language is how we build relationships. Language is how we galvanize and how we communicate with one another and how we learn about each other, right? And what we think about each other, what we know about each other. And so we say the word probation. And the reason why I have that on there, I don't know if anyone else has read about this or thought about this or felt this, but when I hear the word probation, for me personally, I don't believe that that's an empowering word. Here's why I say this. And this is not generalizing this group of people, but I will say for students of color, specifically Black and Latinx, there could be some emotion that connect probation with a very criminal space. Probation. Let me know what you all think, okay? So when we use the word probation, I want us to ask ourselves, is that empowering? You're on probation. You're on probation. Because what we want to do, we want to use terms that are empowering for them, okay? And so we could use an example of students on probation. Instead of saying probation, we can say levels. We could even say colors, okay? But I would say levels or stages. Skill improvement phase. You're on SIP, if we want to use an acronym. You're on SIP. Academic review period. You're on that. You're on ARP, right? Review. We're just reviewing. We had a tough semester. I'm down here in San Marcos, and we have a college town. You were just at industry a little too much. Let's review, okay? Or academic development phase. Of course, in our communication, we will let them know the stipulations of those levels, but I want to make a call for us to change probation and to have it be a little more empowering, okay? So definitely criminally charged. Level 0, yes. 0, 1, 2, 3, yes, absolutely. Okay, and then at-risk student versus at potential. Okay, I learned about this at an institution that I work for because I personally was one of those students and have called other students, oh, that's, they're at risk. Think about the undertone of that word. And the vice president there, academic priority, I love that. That's amazing. One of the VPs of the institution titled this particular group of students who need more support, a little more improvement at potential. Reflects the shift in perspective. Remember, Ubuntu, I am because we are because I am. I have potential. I'm in an improvement phase. So that's 2 policy recommendations. And because of time, I'll move forward, but you all are getting to it into the chat in an amazing way. Thank you. So now we'll get into a little bit of some strategies and some approaches that you can use, and definitely going to do some Q&A. Okay, our time goes by fast, y'all. So you see here, I have DEI SB17. I'm in the state of Texas. And we're not going to spend too much time on this because I think we have so much more to be excited about. And I think we still have a wonderful opportunity to serve our students the way that they need to be served. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., if you haven't read this book, it's an amazing read. It's entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos, Art, or Community. And that word DEI, similar to marginalization, can bring up some emotions. And I want you all to get into the chat as I'm talking, just sharing your thoughts. In the text in the book, he said, let us be those creative dissenters who will call our beloved nation to a higher destiny, to a new plateau of compassion, and to a more noble expression of humanness. Senate Bill 17, under this law, public institutions of higher education cannot engage in diversity, equity, and inclusion activities. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I want us to know that all of us are dealing with some mountains in regards to how do I serve a student population that may fall under DEI. Some states, they don't necessarily have those issues as much as, for example, Senate Bill 17. I work at a state institution. I have to be very careful of what I say and what I do and how I program. And so next, we're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want us to get into the chat really quickly. I'm bringing this up in conjunction with SB 17 or any other laws or policies that your state or institution or school has. I want someone to tell me, this is important because we're talking about DEI, and some of us, and even me at a point until I have to remind myself that, oh, I can't do this program now. I can't serve students who fall in line with this. LGBTQIA students or religion or females or males. I can't target them. But I want to ask you a question. For those that are seeing this slide, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is there any connection to Maslow's hierarchy of needs to someone with a different skin tone? Did Maslow say anything about how we should treat students of color versus how we should treat this particular set of students in the hierarchy of needs? Someone get into the chat. Does this change if you are of another color or race or culture? Do you think that this changes? Y'all let me know. Yes, it changes. This has to change. No. I gotta know. Because the reason why I put that up there and I asked that question is because DEI or CRT, respectfully, ABCD, whatever the issues are as it relates to race or diversity and equity inclusion, I want us to call us up a little higher. To extend and go beyond the race issue or the color issue. We talked about communication. We talked about making a language change. I did say we're focused on Black and Latinx students and marginalized students. We have talked about that, but I built it all the way up to say, let's get to the fundamentals of what every student needs. Let's get to the fundamentals. Despite the color and the neighborhood, and what does every student need? I want us to think about that. Now I'm sharing this journey to help seeking. Now, here's where it is a little different. Still fundamentals, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, no matter what color of skin that you have or your race or your culture, I still know that every student needs these things, or I want to try to operate as much as possible at every level, no matter what you look like. And no, that there are particular sets of students based on history, based on culture and climate and experiences and what we know and see in the research and the literature, that there's a variable in there for Estes, and there's a way we approach in conjunction to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? So the journey to help seeking, I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly. Number one, we say we meet students where they are. We say that a lot. I've said it, I've heard people say it, and I think it's a wonderful phrase. But what do we mean when we say we meet students where they are? Y'all get into the chat and share with me. I'm from Texas, y'all. It's right here. So y'all, tell me, y'all, what do y'all mean? What do y'all mean when we say, oh, we meet students where they are? What exactly does that mean when we say that? To me, it means whatever you are coming with, we're going to meet you right there. Does that mean that? Anybody want to share? So when we say that, it's important for us to acknowledge, have there been experiences? Is there a history? Are we willing to acknowledge we're meeting them where they are? They came on our campus. But then are we willing to acknowledge that there could be some pain and some hurt that this student has dealt with in an educational space? There are certain students, marginalized students of color, we looked at the literature a little bit, they're coming from those 4 dimensions. They may be coming to you with some hurt. Are we willing to acknowledge that that hurt is there? Are we willing to acknowledge that that pain is there? Remember when I asked the question, when was the first time an educator made you feel worthy and inserted belief and purpose into you? And some responses said high school. Some responses said high school. So we went 15 years, 16 years without really having an educator who served us and loved us. So the journey to help seeking, when we say they don't come to our offices, we have these workshops, we have these advising appointments, I'm trying to help them, I love them, I know the creator has called me to do this work, but they're not coming, I'm confused. Well, there's a journey into this that takes longer than 16 weeks, that takes longer than 8 weeks. How many of us have had scenarios where we had the same New Year's resolution every year? It's been taking us some time, right? So it's a journey to help seeking. Number one, first step in that journey, this is like a working model that I'm still operating and editing as I'm on my doctoral journey. But the first step, hurt, pain. The second step, can our students trust us? So I'm dealing with some hurt, I'm dealing with some pain, I'm dealing with the memory of a teacher telling me I'm only going to college to play basketball. I'm still dealing with that. So I have an educator in front of me, but I still have that memory. So then we move on to, can I trust you? So I have to spend some time seeing who you are and how you operate. Because I remember teachers telling me that they were going to stay at my school and then they leave every single year. We have all these teachers every single year. I remember that for me personally. So can your students trust you? And reminding ourselves, write this down, that healing is learning how to trust again. Or for the first time, you may be that first educator that sees them, that values them, that loves them. But it doesn't take 2 days. It may take longer for them to trust you and come to your resources and consider you a mentor and really engage in the community. Lastly, how many of us have been in departments and in spaces where you were there working, but you didn't trust the people you were with? So we can kind of forget that students may be dealing with the same thing. I'm here on the campus, but I don't trust you. I'm here on the campus, but I don't know if you can help me through this very vulnerable time in my life. So can we be trusted? Can your department be trusted? And then I may be coming a little bit more. I may not take advantage of the resources as much as I should. I'm taking a little risk when I'm opening up myself. I've had many students say, well, Miss Harper, I thought I could do it by myself, or Miss Harper, I never really want to ask for help. I don't want people to think this, or I don't want people to think that. It's a risk. It's a risk. So improving confidence, improving help seeking is a journey. So thinking about these things, the variables, the 4S's can really help us. And so when I take that risk, and this is again not generalizing, but when I come into your office, I may not talk as well as I should. I may have a student with a disability. I may not wear the clothes that I'm supposed to wear. I may not know everything. I may not have a lot of money. So being here in this space and being around different people, all the things that are going into my mind and in and through my mind, it's risky. You may hurt me. I could be hurt. I've been hurt before. Or people don't look like me. People don't talk like me. When I said I had a disability earlier, I'm from the South. I'm from Texas. I have my AAFE, African American vernacular, and I have a stuttering problem. I wouldn't say stuttering problem. I am overcoming a stutter. So that's risky for me when I had to talk up and talk out. That was risky. Okay? So we have to think about that. I'm talking with passion, but with Ubuntu, knowing that I am, because we are in this together. And then, okay, it's safe. I don't feel like Rollins is judging me. I don't feel like Brown is judging me. This feels safe. Okay, I'm hurt a little bit, but I feel like I can trust them. They're emailing me, they're texting me, they're calling me, they're showing up. Okay, they're available. I feel inspired and empowered in every experience that I have with this staff member, with this department. Ask us about Chick-fil-A. I don't even have to eat Chick-fil-A that much, but I just want to go and tell them how you doing, my pleasure. I just want to go and experience them. Okay? What would it feel like to have a Chick-fil-A experience in your department? They don't know what they need help with, and they just want to come. They want to come and be around you because it just feels like somebody believes in you. Risky. Risk. Can you be trusted? Okay? Asking for help requires celebration and acknowledgement. Okay? So I have done this personally, and I want to encourage us to think about when students do take a step, and we're going to talk about low risk, low stakes and high stakes in just a moment. But when students do take a risk, when you do see them come into class, even though they may not make the grades just yet at a particular level that we feel is good enough in that moment, do we celebrate any level of progress? Tools and tips. At every level of progress, do we celebrate them? I do come from an athletic background, so I'm always, tapping my hands, somebody gets a rebound. It's a small thing, but it means a lot. It means a lot to our students. Remember what the authors talked about earlier, deprivation. Some students are deprived from encouragement. It may take them a little longer. They may have to transition differently, but some of our students are deprived from encouragement. So how often do you celebrate progress in your department or as an individual for these particular students? All students, but for these particular students. And then lastly, we go from outcomes. Then we can talk about that hope. They went from actions, now we have some outcomes. And when I have some outcomes, when I'm getting some results, when I've been putting in the work, I can have a little more hope. Some of our students need some hope, okay? And so I want to share this with you in this framework. I'm still working on it, but this is how I serve my students and how I think about it in my own personal experiences and professional assessments. I think this is really helpful, and I would love to talk about it more for those that need a little more support. And in the middle, you have the village. You have the familisimo. I'm from Texas, so I'm still working on the Spanish, but you have this idea because these particular students, and we see it in the literature, please, if you have some time, go and learn about Yosto's cultural wealth model. We probably learn about those things. Our students are coming, all students, specifically Black and Brown students, are coming with capital. They know how to do and navigate a lot of things, but again, they're in transition. So this is too about developing that village mentality, that family, that familia mentality. And I often want to bring up the fact that when a student is on stage 2, it does not mean that we lower the standard. We're not changing any policies to make it easier, because love doesn't make it easier. Love keeps the bar high. Who we are as educators, we keep the bar high because we know that they can reach it, because they deserve to be their best self. They're worthy of being their best self. So we have elite resources. You see, I have that in the middle. We have elite resources. We have high standards. We have accountability, and we have empowerment. How do I build the confidence in my students? It's going on this journey with them, creating those resources. Elite, high standards, elite, accountability, elite. They're trying to figure out how you remember that they got that class at 2 o'clock. They come out the room, and you're like, hey, how you doing? You been doing all right? You just rolling up on them. I mean, they just filled with just the overwhelming accountability and empowerment. Okay, so I hope that journey helps you kind of think about it, and again, continue to think critically about this. Okay, we're gonna skip this. All right, so this is kind of some guideposts and a flow chart and activity for you to do for yourself. Okay, for you to do with yourself. We're putting up the mirror a lot. Okay, y'all know how to put on workshops. You all know how to create great curriculum. You all know how to do that. And so what I'm presenting is some energy, but us to think practically about how we look at ourselves and what we're doing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, 4S, et cetera, et cetera. And then how do we place this newfound energy, this transforming mindset, and then serving students? So there's so many things to think about, but I know you all are rocking it out in advising and all those things, but I think these are some of the pieces that we're sometimes missing, okay? So remember I talked about trust and risk. We don't talk about that too often. Trust. What is your first step? Mirror. What is my first step to show the student that I can be trusted with their heart in the process? What is my first step? What's a low stakes opportunity? It could be calling or texting them. Some of us are doing that, but some of us are also may not be doing that as consistently and as well. And we're 1 minute, so I just want to go here, and then for anyone that wants to stay, I think we'll have a couple minutes. And then we talk about risk. What's uncomfortable for you or your department when serving this population of students? Because sometimes we have our own risks. Students have to take a risk, but we also have to take a risk. What is that first low stake opportunity for you to take a little bit of a risk, not harming yourself or others, but what's beneficial but uncomfortable for you or your department? Let's think about it like that. What's beneficial but uncomfortable? Can we trust, can your students trust you? Can they trust your department? They're paying this tuition, they're paying all this, but can they trust you? And are you willing to take your own risks that are not bad, but just uncomfortable, okay? Because of confidence or any type of systematic things that you haven't quite approached yet due to various things. Beneficial, but uncomfortable. And then we can go to that celebration. We want to celebrate ourselves and our students at every point, and then high stakes opportunity. All right, this was a before we go, kind of a next step for you to think about. It's right at the hour here. The main idea, if you want to continue to do some work and think about what we talked about, what's that main idea that you can take from the talk, an action item you or your team can get together, and then who's the point person? Who's going to be the point person on these areas that we talked about? The theory that kind of spoke to you potentially, Mackie, Dr. Schlossberg's theory, talking about transition, roles, responsibilities, assumptions, and daily routines. Have you as a department thought about how you can help your students in transition by using that theory? And then a concern that you may have for your campus to kind of pull it full throttle and point people in the right direction to be able to acknowledge where you all need help and expand and go beyond to an elite level. You all, thank you so much for being here. It has been an honor and a privilege. I'm going to stay on for anybody who wants to talk, and I see there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, we've got a lot of responses. I only flagged 2 questions so far that are definite questions. A lot of them were responses. We got a lot of great responses to the stuff you were saying. And again, don't be alarmed if you can't see the questions. but we're seeing a lot of thank yous, a lot of agreements. But one question we got that I wanted to flag was, how do you create this culture for your students? And I think, just the general culture we're talking about. And Chauncey,
Okay.
if you want to elaborate on that, how do you create this culture for your students when this culture does not exist for staff?
Okay. Earlier in the presentation, I'm going to do an example. Earlier in the presentation, you may not, or you all did not know about the 600 registrants. You may have gotten an email, but for those of you all that didn't know, you may have not known about the 600. You may have not known that we were history makers and record breakers. And I'm going to use this example from an athletic standpoint. If I'm at an institution, they've never been at an elite level. They've never made it. And let me know if you're a sports person so I can make sure this connects with you. But when I come into a place, it may have not been where I am looking to push it to. So we haven't had this culture. We don't celebrate to this level. We don't empower to this level. But you, what name was that, Rachel? You, whoever you are, that
Chauncey.
name,
Sorry.
Chauncey. It may not exist for staff yet, that keyword yet. And this is and can be a very philosophical, theological centered question. It could be. So I'm going to frame it as you are in that space. And if you are in that space, wherever you are, that's the energy that you're bringing. That's the energy that you're bringing for the students. That's the energy that you're bringing in your office, on your hallway. And in a perfect world, Chauncey, I would love to say, well, we have to talk to the president and think of a strategic plan and talk to human resources, and we got to go do this and we got to do that. The one low stakes opportunity for you is to say, you know what, it may not be like this for other staff members, but I know what I believe to be great for everybody. So I'm going to bring that energy wherever I go. And I use that example at the beginning because I can't hear you all speak. I can't hear your claps. I can't, but I know that this webinar, in my opinion, will go down in history. Okay. We'll go down in history. Despite the stuttering, despite times where I'm like, I don't have time, I gotta rush. This is the best, and this is what we do, and this is how we do it. And I'm definitive about that because that is what I believe. But Ubuntu, the way I am is how we are, and how we are is how I am. And I want to bring that philosophy into every space. So Chauncey, you're there because that space needs you, and you're there because the students may also ask that question. Why is nobody, or why don't I feel? But then they have Chauncey. And then it transforms them. But you are in that space for a reason. It's difficult. It's difficult. So I'm not saying you just come to work happy. And I don't know if anybody knows what the word crunk means. My students said that we don't use that word anymore. But every day you're coming in and you're creating that energy and that synergy, and you're casting vision, cast vision. So that's how I would answer that question. You're there. You're there to create that.
All right. And then
Okay.
Chauncey also asks, where should the line be drawn between empowerment and enablement?
Good question. So when we talk about empowerment, we empower someone, not just motivation and inspiration. That's great, But I heard a quote that said, motivation is like taking a shower. You need it every day. Somebody got to come motivate you, pull you out of bed every single day. So it extends past motivation, and being inspired is beautiful as well. But it's the daily commitments and discipline that we need, even when we don't feel inspired or motivated. And so we understand that at the level of our professions and our expertise. And so I believe enabling is bringing the bar down. We don't bring the bar down, we keep the bar high, and we provide a high level of support. And we're staying there, not to simplify too much, but we're saying this is the standard, and this is how much I'm going to support you through your hurt, through your trust, through your risk, through your vulnerability, through the various relationships that you have. I'm going to be right here, but I'm not going to bring the bar down. I'm going to keep the bar high. This is what we expect, and here's how we're going to support you. If it takes you 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I have students that text me all the time, hey, Ms. Harper, I'm back in school. I'm like, congratulations, we back. We back. So in that process, they're probably like, oh, Ms. Harper gets on my nerves. She always talking about discipline and habits and roles and telling me I got to go to bed early so I can get up on time. And so in the process, it's tough. So we're walking through that process with them. So I think the enabling is when we lower the standard to try to appease the emotion or the situation. One more tenet of that, and I'll share this publicly. My father is dealing with stage 3 brain cancer, and every day I can't get it off my mind. That's my best friend. That's my best friend. I can't get it off my mind. But every day I know, and what he has taught me, is that you do have to cope, as Dr. Schleifer said, you do have to cope with things in this life. And you have to also take care of your responsibilities. And enabling me does not teach me how to do things in life that are what I feel to be a requirement, is to cope with the ordinary and the extraordinary, as Dr. Schleifer said. So enabling is trying to, in my opinion, is trying to pull them out of something that can improve their life, but they will have to go through the pain points in order to grow. So that's how I would answer that, if that's helpful to you. If that's helpful to you.
I think so. Thank you. Pedro asks, any recommendations with help-seeking behavior with men of color specifically, and best ways to approach the conversation?
Right. So I work with student athletes of color, men of color, and so I have a resource for you. So please let me know if you want to have that resource. But here's what I was saying. I wouldn't change anything about what, like even the resources that I shared in the approach that I shared with you. I believe the inconsistency, I believe, is what hinders men of color. When other men, or even women, but I would say put some emphasis on when men are not consistent in their life, and when there's not grace and understanding. Grace, let me talk about the grace word. That's not enabling or lowering the standard. It's saying this is the standard, this is the resource, but I understand you're dealing with some challenges, and I'm here, and I'm not going to judge you. So with men of color, a couple of things to think about. Remembering the journey to self, to help seeking. Number one, being consistent. Show up. Show up. I've seen educators, and I've done it myself. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to help you with this, young brother. I'm going to do this. And you don't. And young people remember that, or we don't. Young people remember that. So be consistent. Cultural connection. Try to put as many men of color around him as possible. Okay. So if it's you, get some more men of color, just for some connection and some identity connection. Okay. So be consistent. Get community around him. Do not love, and provide safety. Provide safety, showing him that you can be vulnerable, that it's okay to be vulnerable and tell me, because we are talking about a young man. So not get too deep into gender roles, and I don't want to get too deep in that to offend. I'm still learning about that myself, but in my opinion, that's still a young man. So not seeking help. I think I've seen that more with my male students, my Black male students, than my Black female students. Okay, females who are Black, males who are African American. Okay, so those things, think about those things. Be consistent, show up, put a community around him. Don't lower the bar, high standards, high resource, and helping him feel that this is a safe space in my office. That you can, if your pants are sagging, if you this, no judgment. Don't talk about some of those things yet. Sometimes we talk so much about their clothes and their hair and how they talk. And so when they get into the room, okay, you're already doing all this to me, then I may not come back. So a safe space for him and them to talk about where they're vulnerable in their academics, because some of them may have had a lot of hurt and pain in education. So those are some of the things that I would share with you, but I would love to talk further.
Right. And Angelica asks, I oversee a team of a few peer mentors who work directly with students on academic probation. I noticed them
Mm,
struggle to build rapport with students on academic probation, and she wants to know if it would be appropriate for her to share this webinar with them.
absolutely. Yes, yes. Yay, peer mentors. They are the best. They are superstars.
Yeah,
We
awesome. Yeah, no, feel free to share. Grant asks, as mentioned previously, I work mainly with first-time and college students, and I want to know if you have any strategies or methods for working with students in this stage of life with regard to empowering them when they may not meet the high standards they or their community has of them and they feel defeated.
how to empower students who, one more time, how to
So
empower.
how to empower first-time and college students if they don't meet the high standards that they have themselves or that their community has of them and they're feeling defeated.
Mm, I would go back to, and when we talk about empowerment, I would go back to the four strategies or the four S's. And the particular one, feeling defeated, feeling defeated. That's the self category. They're still in the transition, so we still want to go through all four S's. But the psychological, how do we empower? Okay, now we need to think about the resources that we have on our campus. So they're feeling defeated. Why are they feeling defeated? So if they're feeling defeated, then there is something going on. Being defeated, I don't believe is the root. There's something up under that. And I would also, in love, Ubuntu, I would also encourage all of us, because I've said that myself, saying that someone does not need something because of their background or their community, we may not know fully their entire background. So when we say they don't need, we have to be careful when we say a student doesn't need something because we don't know exactly what they need. And so when we empower students, again, going through the process, doing what you do, taking it to the next level about that journey, because help seeking, receiving help in general, is learning a lot of things about yourself, your self-esteem, your confidence. That's also before you even ask for help. How many of us have taken a lot of time, maybe before we went to therapy or counseling, or taking a lot of time before we took that next step in our life? Or when we were feeling defeated, we may have looked like we didn't need something, but in private, in your closet, in your own mind, you knew what you needed, but you didn't know how to tell anyone. And so I would say that to you, teammate, brother, same process, put the resources around them, put it around them, and just, I don't say just, but let's be a little more careful when it comes to saying we don't need something, because we may not know. We may not know what they need and what happened in their homes growing up. Yes, sir. But I wanna definitely talk with you more about that. That is such a wonderful question.
Yeah. And we can pass along anybody who'd like to have their information passed along, and you can contact Chrisika as well, and I'll pass along some of these questions to her. And some of the points that have been raised today. This looks like the last question we have so far. Amina asks, do you have any pointers on how to get students more engaged or motivated?
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen one more time if that's okay. Because I want
Yeah,
to show you something
it's
I
still,
didn't
you're
get you.
still sharing your desktop.
Oh, okay, I'm still okay. I cleaned up my desktop just for y'all. I see 109 people still on here, so y'all still want to talk a little bit. But I had a lot of things I didn't get to. Can I share this with you all a little bit? Let me share when you say get them engaged. I have something because I have a development background, institutional advancement, I promise you, I'm not gonna ask y'all for no money. Okay, I promise. But I do have that background. Okay. And so of course I've been involved with a lot of events and not being afraid to make the ask. But I have this framework that I use because I do events and stuff, and I call it the LFPs. And I brought it into higher education because it came from event management, hosting events. y'all can probably tell I have a Greek background as well, so I'm on the mic. I'm on the mic a lot. I'm on the mic. So LFPs, when you ask the question, how do I get them engaged? How do I get them motivated? Well, let's talk about your events just a little bit, okay? Location, food, partnerships, perks, and promo. You see, that takes quite a while. When we talk about student engagement, I think we're living in day and time. For those of us who are maybe millennials and before, okay, I'm not 33 years old, I'm on a 33rd level, okay? So for those of us who are, you know, working as staff members, life is definitely different than the students. The way they're living their lives is different from how we lived our lives on college campuses. And so I think it's important for us to elevate our event experience and elevate partnerships. And so here's like a framework you can think about getting students engaged. What we talked about, plus, are your events exciting? When we ask that question, I think sometimes we think, oh, you just want me to make it fun and fluffy. It's not about that. You can have a great learning session, a high level, critical thinking, amazing panels, amazing speakers, just great content. But the students don't know about it. There's not a strategic partnership that elevates it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and so I would say, I'm going to share this out. I would say, really think about, okay, how can we elevate our event experience? Not just having pizza, but what are our partnerships like? Okay, so here's, like, for example, here's an example, y'all. Okay, this is something I was a part of. Okay, Time, Tacos, and Tone, like the 3 T's, and we did it like once a month. We partnered with the rec center, went into the conference room. We had the food, local food vendor that gave us like 75% off on the food, because I know budgets can be a concern. Then we have the partnership, right? So we use the campus rec center, and the campus rec center provided the fitness training. Okay, and then there was a perk for them, right? Which is following the workshop. We talked about time management, following the workshop. Then we're gonna go over to the rec center and we're gonna do a little workout. The first showing of this event, we had about 10 people, all girls, might I add. And then we did the promo for it, we did the videos, we did the testimonials, and we just hyped it up. We kept leveling up the marketing, the experience, and then the next time management workshop that we had 37 students. And so when we talk about 37 students in a time management workshop, that's optional. I mean, that's saying something. And so for anybody that needs help elevating their campus workshops and events, please let me know. But here's an example, okay? And so when we talk about engagement, we have to level that up, okay? And I know that's something that maybe we didn't have to do when we were in college, but we have to be event managers. We have to be marketers. Y'all see how I came onto the video? Not that I'm the perfect model, but when we do things and we want our students to see learning is fun, success is fun, working hard is fun, and we can celebrate that, then we have to show that too. But if I ask, hey, you coming to our time management workshop tonight? Okay, like sometimes we don't have the most energy. And I'm not telling you to bounce off the walls, but it's a process, marketing, promo, things like that, partnerships. I got the president one time last week. I got one of my college presidents to send up. He just put the video up, say, y'all, hey, how y'all doing? Make sure you go to the workshop tonight. I got the president to send us a video. Now, I had to ask like 3 times, but see, I never gave up. And so now you got the president doing marketing, and we put that on Instagram and TikTok. So, creative things like that you can do.
Awesome. And it looks like that was the last of the questions. And I know that a lot of folks have to drop off. Well, thank you. Thank you, Christica, for being so generous with your time today. This has been an incredible presentation, and what a way to start our 2024 series. So for those of you still with us, just a reminder, if you when you leave, you'll be redirected to a survey. We will be sending out information about our next webinar soon, and also our upcoming live conference in October. So be on the lookout for that. And we so appreciate everyone's time today. We will be sending out the recording, and I think Christica has some supplemental materials she'd like us to include. So we will be sending that out.
Yes, and if y'all have, like, I'm on LinkedIn, Christica Harper. If you need any help, support, listen. If you want somebody to come speak to your students, call me. Call me.
Awesome.
I will come.
We'll include her information in the recording as well in the email. But thank
Yes.
you again, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It was a great presentation. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everyone.